Another flight, another chance to escape for Britons desperate to flee Sudan. The UK government arranges an extra rescue mission from the war-torn country for those still trying to get out.
I think even the journey to the airport was quite traumatic. They were stopped multiple times at checkpoints. My sister-in-law was accused of being an RSF sympathiser, and they had to sort of explain that no, she really isn't.
Also tonight, the latest nurses' strike is less than 2 hours away, but more action may already be on the horizon. Cracking down on cold callers, selling financial deals on the phone is to be banned to stop fraud and...
Eluded the challenge as well, and that is absolutely magnificent!
Another victory puts the reigning champions Manchester City in pole position in the Premier League.
This is ITV News with Lucy Watson.
Good evening. Just hours after declaring the air evacuation of British citizens from Sudan over, the Foreign Office has announced there will be at least one more flight, not from Khartoum, but from Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast, where thousands of refugees of all nationalities have been gathering to escape the fighting. Those eligible must be at the airport there by midday local time tomorrow, if they want to join the more than 2,000 people who've already left as Sudan teeters on the brink of civil war. Sam Holder has the story.
The dark cloud of violence hangs over Sudan. Information is still incredibly difficult to get out of the country. Videos circulating online appear to show a branch of the country's central bank on fire in Khartoum and destruction in the city of Ghanena in the far west. This morning, the British evacuation effort was over. These planes were supposed to be the final ones back to the UK.
The last flight has already taken off. We were clear all the way through this week. The Foreign Secretary was clear that we couldn't guarantee flights out of the country when the ceasefire came to an end.
But in a surprise move this afternoon, the government announced an extra flight will take off tomorrow. Across Sudan, people are trying to leave any way they can. The flight for British nationals, NHS workers and their dependents will not depart from the capital. Instead, from here, Port Sudan, 500 miles away on the coast. Travel within the country is perilous. Sarah's brother is still there, caring for an elderly relative. But her mother escaped last week.
I think even the journey to the airport was quite traumatic. They were stopped multiple times at checkpoints. My sister-in-law was accused of being an RSF sympathiser, and they had to sort of explain that no, she really isn't. And so I think, you know, by the time they got here, it was just pretty horrendous experience all round.
Adil only just made it onto a previous government flight to Cyprus.
Been trying 3 days or 4 days to come. It's so difficult. The situation is that's why it's take really a lot of risk.
So far, 2,122 people have left on 23 British flights. But there are fears that more remain too scared to travel. Sam Holder, ITV News.
The NHS says it is braced for significant disruption across England as nurses prepare to go on strike this evening, starting in less than 2 hours' time. Health bosses have called this third strike by members of the Royal College of Nursing Union the most worrying so far. For the first time, they will be walking out of critical services such as intensive care, although some exemptions have been made to provide urgent care in some hospitals. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
From 8 o'clock this evening, nurses in England will be on strike again. The strike will end at midnight tomorrow after being cut short by legal action, and it will involve nurses providing more cover than originally planned, with a number of exemptions being negotiated over the weekend to provide staffing in intensive care and trauma units.
I welcome that exemptions have now been put in place for intensive care and also for the emergency department, but it's still the case there will be significant disruption to patients, and I think that is disrespectful to the other trade unions that are part of the NHS Staff Council, who will be meeting on Tuesday in order to vote on the fair and reasonable settlement that we agreed with them some weeks ago.
Some NHS unions have accepted the pay offer, whilst others, like the nurses, have not. If Tuesday's Staff Council meeting of unions and employers accepts it, the Health Secretary may give staff the pay rise anyway. But regardless of that, the RCN are voting on further strike action.
If he wants to avert further industrial action by our members, which we will reballot mid-May, that will close mid-June, and then we could see the outcome of that ballot will depend, obviously dependent on it. We could see our members taking industrial action right up to Christmas.
But more strikes are by no means guaranteed. The RCN's leadership had recommended accepting the current pay offer, and the number of members rejecting it, 54%, was not overwhelming. The decision on whether to strike again over an offer that may already be landing in nurses' pay packets will be a tough one.
So, Carl, with this strike looming and more possible through Christmas, are the nurses going to start losing the battle for public opinion, do you think?
Well, there's no sign of that yet, Lucy. I mean, support for striking nurses is higher than for any other group of striking workers. Around 60% of the public back them, and that includes people I've spoken to here at University College Hospital who've been coming out of the hospital, patients and their families, who say, yeah, give the nurses more money. What that means is that when they do strike, people tend to blame the government for the disruption. But where I think there is a glimmer of light for the government's point of view is that when you take into account turnout amongst nurses, it was only about a third of the total RCN membership that rejected the latest pay offer. So I think support for strikes may be starting to wane amongst the nurses themselves. We'll find that out later in the summer.
Carl, thank you. A man has died after a stabbing outside a nightclub in Cornwall. The man in his 30s was confirmed dead at the scene in Bodmin at around 3 a.m. this morning. 7 other people were taken to hospital. Their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening. Police say they are questioning a man in connection with the incident.
Later this morning, a 24-year-old male from the Bodmin area was arrested on suspicion of murder, attempted murder and causing grievous bodily harm with intent. He remains in police custody at this time.
A 5-month-old baby is in hospital after a dog attack in South Wales. It happened yesterday in Penarreol on the outskirts of Caerphilly. It's the 3rd dog attack in the same small community in 3 years. 10-year-old Jack Liss was mauled to death there in 2021, and 83-year-old Shirley Patrick was attacked last December. She later died of her injuries. A gunman who killed 5 people in the US, including an 8-year-old boy, is still on the run more than 24 hours after the tragedy. The FBI has joined the search for the suspect in Texas, where police dogs and horses have been scouring the countryside. Hamish Alscary has the latest.
A disagreement between neighbours that left 5 people shot dead. Police say the incident occurred after 38-year-old Francisco Oropeza began firing a gun at random outside his home in Cleveland, north of Houston. When a neighbour asked him to stop because a baby was asleep next door, Mr. Oropeza allegedly walked into his neighbour's house and started shooting.
We consider him armed and dangerous, and we're not going to stop until we actually arrest him and bring him into custody. But he is out there and he's a threat to the community.
2 female victims were found lying on top of surviving children after shielding them from the bullets. The youngest killed was just 8 years old. The devastating impact of the shootings is clear, but finding the person responsible is proving harder. Today, the FBI released this new picture of the suspect, who they were tracking using his mobile phone data, but then the trail ran cold.
He could be anywhere now. We located the device that we were looking for, found it abandoned. So at this time, the area has went from 5 or 6 square miles. It could be as much as 10 or 20, depending on whether or not he crossed the Highline wire.
It's less than a year since 19 students and 2 teachers were killed by a gunman in Uvalde, also in Texas. Now the residents of this small town in San Jacinto County face picking up the pieces of yet another fatal shooting in their state. Hamish Alskerry, ITV News.
Marketers of all financial products are to be banned from cold calling prospective customers in an effort to stamp out fraud. Cold calls about pension schemes are already illegal, and the new rules will extend that ban, making anyone receiving a call about insurance, cryptocurrency or other investments confident enough to hang up and report the scammer. Martha Fairley reports.
Once you're hooked and I've got your money, you'll never hear from me again.
It's estimated up to 41 million adults were targeted by suspicious calls and texts last year. With advances in technology,
May I just have 1 minute of your time?
It's easier than ever for fraudsters to target their victims, tricking them into buying financial products. Cold callers sent this official-looking document to a couple in Cumbria 3 weeks ago, convincing them to pay nearly £5,000 into a fake tax payment scheme.
They use words psychological pressure. Psychological pressure. I have never seen my husband being like that. And they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing, what to say, who were they speaking to.
Just want me to fill in my signature.
Cold calling to sell pension products is already illegal. Now the government's preparing to announce an extension to the law to include all financial products like cryptocurrency and insurance in a bid to make it easier to spot a scam. But this expert says more also needs to be done to catch the fraudsters.
I think we do need to do more on public awareness. We do need to increase the budget for fraud investigation as well. I think the police would agree, and many consumer groups would agree that, many people get away with fraud. So I think that's another big issue.
The government's also planning to ban electronic boxes known as SIM farms that rapidly send thousands of fake texts to victims in a bid to tackle the £6.8 billion cost of fraud every year. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
In the Premier League, Manchester City have gone above Arsenal to the top of the table for the first time in more than 2 months. The champions moved into pole position with a 2-1 win at Fulham on a landmark day for goal-scoring sensation Erling Haaland. Chris Scudder was watching.
It's looking ominous. City could not have timed it better. Back on top of the Premier League for the first time since February. And while the hopes of near season-long leaders Arsenal have nosedived, City are making them pay the penalty. An early spot kick and a landmark goal.
And this is history.
A record equalling 34th Premier League goal of the season for Erling Haaland and a remarkable 50th in all competitions.
Goal-scoring greatness.
It wasn't all plain sailing. Fulham got themselves level with a lovely finish from Brazilian Vinicius. And just for a while it looked as though City's luck in front of goal might be running out. But despite the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, they brought in a World Cup winning backup, and this was world class.
Well, and that is absolutely magnificent.
Julian Alvarez showing just why City's strength in depth is simply unrivaled. It was a goal that won them the match, and with a feverish desire to now stay top, it might just be all over, bar the shouting. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And a remarkable match has just ended at Anfield. Liverpool beat Spurs in a dramatic finish. The Reds had taken a 3-goal lead inside the first 15 minutes. Mo Salah's penalty threatened another thrashing for Spurs, but they came storming back to equalise at 3-3 in stoppage time, only for Liverpool to score an even later winner through Diego Jota, 4-3 in a breathless finish. And in Scotland, Celtic are through to the Scottish Cup final thanks to a 1-0 victory over Old Firm rivals Rangers in the semi-final at Hampden Park. Jota scored the only goal. And Red Bull's Sergio Perez won today's Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku, his second win of the season. Teammate and World Championship leader Max Verstappen finished second. That's all for now. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello again. Good evening to you. Over the next few days, our weather will begin to settle down, but further heavy, thundery downpours are expected for parts of the country tonight and again for Bank Holiday Monday. During the course of this week, it shouldn't feel too cold. We'll just about avoid frosts over the next few nights. Tonight, it isn't chilly, but some heavy, thundery downpours are working their way south and east over the next few hours. Further north across Scotland, damp conditions with low cloud, mistiness and further showers for western parts of England and Wales through tonight. But as I mentioned before, it isn't too chilly and we're free from frost. A largely dry start to the day tomorrow, but rather cloudy conditions. Rain across Scotland sinking down into northern England during the morning, and a rash of heavy showers for central and eastern parts of England during the day. Some of these heavy and thundery. It will feel warm in the southeast at around 19 Celsius. Further north, another cool day in prospect, but brightening up later on. Bye-bye.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.